Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to today's Explainer. Look, if you're a corporate leader, an innovator, or, just someone trying to navigate our modern tech world, you've definitely been hit with the absolute tidal wave of AI hype. But today, we're stripping away the magic and the mystery. As an advisor guiding teams through this exact transformation, I always start by telling them this. AI is not some mystical force. It is a highly structured, step-by-step supply chain. And just like a traditional manufacturing supply chain takes raw physical materials and turns them into finished products, the intelligent supply chain takes raw information and refines it into actionable insight and creation. So today, we are going to literally walk the floor of that exact digital factory. Here is our strategic roadmap for the meeting. We're going to trace this whole journey, starting with number 1, data, the raw material. Then 2, inside neural networks. 3, from prediction to action. 4, the generative AI leap. And finally, number 5, human and machine collaboration. Let's get right into it.
Starting off with Section 1, data, the raw material. Before we even touch on artificial intelligence, we kind of have to ground ourselves in what intelligence actually means. At its core, it's simply the ability to observe, learn, recognize patterns, and make decisions based on those patterns. But for a machine to do that, it desperately needs something to observe. And that brings us to the very foundation of this entire supply chain, massive flowing streams of real-world data. Think of it like a giant digital mining operation. Every single image captured, every spoken word, medical scans in a hospital, satellite footage of Earth, traffic light systems, and global financial records. These aren't just standalone files anymore. They are the foundational raw material. Millions of data points are constantly being assembled into organized digital layers. Without this massive influx of real-world info, the AI engines have absolutely nothing to run on. Moving right along to Section 2, inside neural networks.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the exact workflow. Once we've gathered all that raw material, where does it actually go? Well, it enters a very specific step-by-step processing plant. First, we input that raw data. Then comes the training phase. And listen, this isn't like old school programming where a human writes a rule saying, hey, if this happens, do that. Instead, the machine is fed thousands, sometimes literally billions of examples. We're talking images of cars, voices, road signs. The system studies this massive mountain of data and actively searches for hidden patterns that a human engineer might never even be able to directly program. And once it locks onto those patterns, it can finally start making predictions. The engine room where all this math happens is called a neural network. If you imagine a highly realistic 3D digital model inspired by the human brain, you're pretty much on the right track. These are layers upon layers of artificial neurons. When data comes in, signals pass from one layer to another, lighting up these digital pathways. Each layer breaks down the info further. Maybe the first layer just spots the edges in a medical scan, the next recognizes shapes, and the final layer actually identifies a specific disease. It's a highly structured, step-by-step transformation of raw input into actual comprehension.
All right, Section 3, from prediction to action.
Okay, so the machine has recognized a pattern. But it doesn't just stop there, right? AI deals in shapes, sounds, words, and most importantly, probabilities. It uses these probabilities to estimate what is most likely to happen next and then recommends an action. But as an advisor looking at implementation, I always ask teams this absolutely crucial question. How does an AI model actually improve its accuracy over time? Seriously, if it's just making probabilistic guesses based on patterns, how on earth do we trust it to run a supply chain or assist in a medical diagnosis? So, the crucial point is the machine learning feedback loop. It's basically our supply chain's ultimate quality control mechanism. Let's be real, when an AI system first acts, it makes mistakes. Imagine a brand new robotic arm on a modern manufacturing line. At first, it might completely misjudge a shape and drop an object. Or a voice assistant might totally misinterpret what you said. But here's the kicker. Every single time it fails, it receives feedback. Each mistake becomes vital information. Each little correction refines the model. Over time, through repeated cycles, those error marks fade away, the training accuracy rises, and the model perfectly stabilizes and sharpens. It's a constant, continuous loop of learning from failure. And man, when that refined model is deployed into the real world, the applications are just staggering. We are talking about control rooms and factories where AI is anticipating massive supply chain delays long before they even happen. It's predicting traffic flow to totally optimize smart city grids. In hospitals, it's acting as a highly trained second pair of eyes, identifying early-stage diseases in medical scans that humans might easily miss, sometimes years before symptoms even appear.
It's analyzing minute fluctuations in stock movements. This predictive power is actively solving complex logistics and medical crises right now out in the real world. Which brings us to Section 4, the Generative AI Leap. Everything we've discussed so far has been about prediction and recognition, analyzing what already exists. But recently, our digital supply chain underwent a massive technological leap forward. We moved from simply predicting outcomes to creating entirely new content, powered largely by large language models. To put it simply and skip the heavy jargon, imagine feeding millions of books, websites, research papers, and lines of code into a massive system. The model learns the intricate relationships between words, context, and ideas. It breaks language down into tiny fragments called tokens. So when you give it a prompt, it doesn't just copy and paste an answer, no way. It calculates and predicts the next most meaningful response, building its answer entirely from scratch, one token at a time, based on the structure of all that ingested knowledge. And this brilliantly illustrates the true power of generative AI. It completely transcends mere recognition. Because by understanding the deep structure of existing knowledge, it can recombine those concepts in powerful new ways to generate totally realistic images, write complex software code, compose music, or even design physical products. For doctors, engineers, and corporate businesses, this means having an intelligent collaborator that dramatically accelerates creative problem solving and scientific discovery. And finally, Section 5, Human and Machine Collaboration. We've traced the flow from raw data all the way to generative output, but honestly, the most important element in this entire technological ecosystem isn't the machine, it's us. To really solidify everything we've covered today for your teams, let's ground this complex journey in a clear, real-world healthcare scenario. We start with the raw input stage, gathering the data, which means collecting thousands of medical scans. Then we move to the learned meaning stage. The neural networks recognize patterns to identify diseases hidden in those scans. And finally, the generative output stage, creating solutions. This is where the AI actually recommends entirely personalized medical treatments based on the patient's unique profile. It's a seamless progression from gathering to recognizing to creating. Let's move to this next thought and see how this builds a clear foundational understanding. Data, learning, patterns, intelligence. These are the 4 absolute pillars of how AI works, period. When we harness these pillars correctly, we can build a global network of AI systems that genuinely support humanity. Teachers personalizing education for every student, scientists accelerating climate discoveries, and engineers designing safer, much more efficient cities. Which leaves us with this final thought. Artificial intelligence is an incredibly powerful tool. It learns from our data, it recognizes the patterns of our world, and it generates remarkable new possibilities. But its greatest power is unlocked only when it is paired with human intuition, empathy, and leadership. It is not here to replace humanity, folks. It is here to expand what humanity can achieve. So the question you should really be asking yourself now is, in your industry, in your specific role, how will you use this intelligent supply chain to expand what you can build tomorrow? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I seriously look forward to seeing what you create.